Yeah, I mean, even the team we're starting with first is like the Hawks just made the Eastern Conference Finals, and I think they're so good. They have so many good players, but it's like, what do they still feel one ridiculously good player short of being anything like to get back to that level in the East next year. I don't
Yeah,
want to
and
take it. Go
we've
ahead.
seen the rumors that like they might be interested in moving back the timeline a little bit with some of the younger pieces and dealing Cam Reddish or DeAndre Hunter for another premier pick in this upcoming draft or something along those lines. And then there's the big looming John Collins question. Is he going to get paid? Is he going to end up signing elsewhere? If he does sign elsewhere, is it an offer sheet that Atlanta is going to match? So there's still a lot of moving pieces with this Hawks team, even though it does feel like the core is at least somewhat solidified. So my pick for them was really just like any 3-and-D wing. Like if you name a 3-and-D wing, that's the kind of player Atlanta should be pursuing. And because it made the Eastern Conference Finals this past season, I think it opens the door to pursue more of a veteran 3-and-D guy than someone with upside, because you do have upside scattered throughout the roster. So the name that kept coming to mind for me was Danny Green. You know, he is not the same that he was in his prime, but I do think it's eminently realistic that he could sign a veteran minimum contract or, you know, something a little bit more than that and join a team like the Hawks that could be one perfect fitting role player away from emerging from that Eastern Conference Finals contention into like true NBA Finals contention.
Yeah, and it's, they're still like sort of flexible this offseason, even with factoring in that they're going to have to pay uh, John Collins. So they could, even just having by virtue of the full mid level exception, the bigger mid level exception, it does put you in a position to sign someone like that. I also thought, do they need to focus more on trades just because their roster's in like this consolidation mode? But I also, one of the things that I think they could do is, I know you said they suggested they're moving their timeline back. Does that include maybe of, I don't want to say perpetuating the status quo, but like a move I came up with for them that I actually really like is get Avery Bradley and Danuel House from the Houston Rockets for Chris Dunn and that OKC 2022 first rounder, which is lotto protected and turns into 2 seconds if it doesn't convey. That's a move that I think makes them deeper, more serviceable, maybe not noticeably better, and then still sort of allows them to plumb. I know there's been rumors they might want to trade Cam Reddish, but still seeing what they have in their wing rotation with Kevin Huerter, with DeAndre Hunter, who's been injured, with Cam Reddish, who's been injured himself, but also just flashed that upside towards the end of their series with the Milwaukee Bucks. So I'm curious if they would go that route. I don't know that they could make a nuclear trade, but even when you look at the best players out there on the trade market, you don't see Beal, Levine, Siakam. They all the Hawks might have the assets to get them. I just don't think that they're necessarily what the Hawks would need. The name
No,
that's being
I don't either.
the name that's out there that I think might make sense for them if he's actually available, which I would argue he's not, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, even though he is extension eligible. If Oklahoma City really is willing to trade him, I love the fit next to Trae Young there.
Yeah, that would be great. I can't see OKC actually pulling the trigger on that kind of trade. I think for me, the Hawks' ideal offseason looks like moving Chris Dunn and Danilo Gallinari for more help on the wings in a consolidation kind of trade, and probably trying to re-sign John Collins, even if it means that you're moving pretty far into the tax. But ultimately, this is one of those rosters where it proved how competitive it was with Trae Young at the helm. And there's still so much internal room for growth because there are just a bajillion young players. I mean, Onyeka Okongwu is set back because he had shoulder surgery, I believe, that he just underwent. That hurts a little bit, but even still, like he'll be back by the time the stretch run is happening. There are enough pieces, and we saw him flash his potential during the playoffs. There is a lot of incumbent talent that has yet to be plumbed on this roster.
If you had to, last thing to wrap up on them, would you lean? Everyone wants the 3-and-D wing, but they're so hard to find, especially in this market, and especially when you're working with the same spending tool as probably a majority of the rest of the league. Do you lean more defense or more offense for them on the wings right now?
Definitely more defense, especially if John Collins is back, where I think that the Trae Young alone guarantees you a high floor offense. And you just have to be able to lessen his defensive responsibilities to ensure that he can shoulder that burden for the entirety of the season and postseason.
Yeah, and I think the flyer one, and this leans more defense, I think, given how he's played, but Josh Richardson might be another name if he declines his player option or if Dallas is looking to to trade him. Like that would be interesting. And I know the last one I'll mention is people have mentioned Spencer Dinwiddie. I don't hate his fit next to Trae, but I agree with you that I think you need to lean more defense. And Dinwiddie doesn't, he kind of crimps your spacing and he's like fine on defense, but it's not, the minutes with him and Trae would be fine. So I'm in agreement with your assessment there.